Gears of War is one of Microsoft's most lucrative franchises. I mean, despite being in a bit of a rut, the original 3 games are some of the most critically acclaimed in Microsoft's entire library. But following a change in developer, the franchise has been it's been in a bit of a rough spot. But Microsoft is committed to keeping the series moving forward, and we recently got a few pieces of information that point us even closer to a remastered collection dropping in the very near future. Welcome to Video Game Leaks, everybody. That's what we cover. We have an in-depth video for you about Gears of War Remastered, the collection, and how it could be possibly launching this summer. By the time you watch this video, we may have even more clarification because we'll have Summer Games Fest, we'll have Xbox Bethesda, and we'll probably know what's going on. Now, it's recently been confirmed that Gears 6 is in the heat of development, but multiple insiders are insistent that some kind of Marcus Phoenix collection will be dropping before the new game comes out. And we recently uncovered some context that points to an impending launch. Now, ever since Epic Games left the franchise, things have been rocky. But if this all ends up being true, I think Gears is about to see a huge revival. Now, Gears of War 4 was the first outing developed by the Coalition. Got pretty solid reviews back in 2016. It brought in a new cast of characters. It effectively tied them to those of the original trilogy. While the new enemy wasn't that interesting, the gameplay was solid. It was jam-packed with content. Gears 5, well, on the other hand, it didn't fare too well with the community. Released in 2019, Gears 5 was the first in the series to not focus on the Phoenix family and featured a rather drastic change in gameplay style. Larger open maps, even some light RPG elements. Now, the gameplay changes received mixed reviews, and the game quickly lost a lot of its audience due to the lack of content, some pretty obvious balancing oversights. I mean, we'll keep it nice, both of which were made worse once again by a predatory business model, although it was altered later. Now, Gears 5 player counts are embarrassing. Microsoft really needs something big to bring the community back to their side before Gears 6 drops. So, the first hints at a remastered Gears collection came a few months ago when insiders started claiming that Microsoft was working on another Master Chief collection, but for a different franchise. Now, the company has been very impressed with the MCC's numbers, and they want to employ the same strategy to one of their IPs. They revive the community, preserve the older titles, drop a new entry. At first, it was unclear if this was going to be Gears or Fable, which was one of the Xbox's first exclusive titles ever, and a reboot is currently in development for that on the X. Now, a few weeks ago, we got news that said we are going to be getting Gears, and it's going to be getting the MCC treatment, which makes a lot more sense than Fable if you ask me. Now, Fable does have a tremendous amount of content. It's still an RPG franchise opposed to Gears, which is a third-person shooter that features campaign, PvP, multiplayer, and PvE horde mode. Now, the inherent differences between Fable and Gears' games makes the latter a much better candidate for a Master Chief Collection style remaster, and it seems that that's the direction Microsoft is heading in. Now, it was confirmed on May 20th that Gears 6 was getting ready to enter the performance capture phase of development, which that gives us a little bit of insight as to when it's actually coming out. So by my estimates, and they're by no means right, but I'll give you the best I can, the game is likely going to come out in 2023 if it's entering performance capture right now. And then going off the established Gears release dates, I'm going to guess that we'll get our hands on it sometime between September and November of next year. Now, so far, every mainline Gears game has released between September and November, so I think it's a safe bet, it's a safe assumption to say that's when we will see Gears 6 launch next year. But why is this important, you may ask? Well, because some of the same insiders that told us a Gears Remastered collection is in the works also are telling us that it will come out before Gears 6 does. Now, that doesn't give us a lot of time. It doesn't, if we're sticking with 2023 September to November. Now, if you look at the franchise's history, Gears of War has only had one remastered game. Gears of War Ultimate Edition. It was a remaster of the original game, and it launched on the Xbox One in August of 2015. This game was meant to bring people back to the series while also prompting Gears fans to buy an Xbox One so they could take part in the future of the franchise. Then 1 year and a few months later, they dropped Gears 4. Now, since the Gears community had been reestablished on the next-gen consoles, Microsoft was ready to drop the next step in the main series, and I think that's exactly the plan of action they're doing now. If Gears 6 is going to launch in 2023, which all roads point that way, it needs Gear players to upgrade to a new Xbox in order to play it. So all arrows seem to be pointing to a remastered collection dropping a year prior to steer them to that next-gen console tech. Now, when looking at the information we have and the likely goals of Microsoft, it's safe to assume that they intend to revive the Gears series before dropping a new installment. After all, they drove a lot of people away from the series with 5. They did. So they need to bring those people back and get them to buy an Xbox Series console before the new game drops. Now, looking back at Gears of War Ultimate Edition, it can give us some insight as to what they may be planning. Gears UE was a huge success for Microsoft, and it would make total sense for them to simply replicate the strategy a second time for guaranteed results. I mean, Gears UE was announced at E3 2015, then it was released just a couple months later. Microsoft is reportedly going to have a huge presence at Summer Game Fest. No E3 this year, it doesn't matter, and it would be a perfect time for them to mirror that strategy, announce the Gears Remastered collection, drop it before the end of the year, boom! People come running back, and they get an Xbox Series X. Gears UE released in August. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they pushed this back to September or October in order to give the team more time to polish so they can avoid launching the way the Master Chief Collection did all those years ago. So, what will the game have? Well, we've got details. They're murky, but let's talk about them. After all, it was Nick Baker of the Xbox Era podcast who first said the collection was launching this fall, but even he didn't seem to know what games were included. He alluded to it being all of the Xbox 360 titles, which would make sense because Gear 4 and 5 are already playable on the Xbox Series consoles via backwards compatibility, but nothing is set in stone right now. Every leak seems to agree that Gears 1, 2, and 3 will be included. It could also be assumed that Gears Ultimate Edition would be included alongside Gears 1, maybe similar to how both Halo 2 and Halo 2 Anniversary content were included in the MCC, but it's unclear if Gears of War Judgment, which was a spin-off, will be included as well, as that game wasn't nearly as well received as the rest of the franchise. It's also unclear if the collection will simply throw in Gears 4 and 5 as download codes or as part of the collection itself. But no matter what we end up getting, I mean, Gears 1, 2, and 3, let's just say they're virtually confirmed. The rest is up in the air, but frankly, those aren't important games anyway, so we're not going to worry about those. Now let's talk about the content. It can be safely assumed that all the campaigns will be included, and the multiplayer will likely be handled the same way the Master Chief Collection did it. They'll preserve the maps, the weapons, the gameplay mechanics of each individual game, and allow the player to jump from game to game via matchmaking filters. Horde mode, that's where things get crazy, or they could. Horde was a huge part of Gears 2 and 3, but they were wildly different from one another in terms of gameplay. You had Gears 2 Horde, it was a simple survival game, but Gears 3 incorporated more base building, resource management, and I think both 2 and 3 featured Horde on every single multiplayer map, so that begs the question, will Horde be one giant mode, or will we get to play both different versions separately? Now, will I be able to jump between Gears 2 and 3 Horde, or will there just be one Horde mode that includes all the maps? Will I be able to play Gears 3 Horde on the Gears 2 maps? Will any mechanics from Gears 4 and 5 be incorporated? Will Beast Mode from Gears 3 return? Every Gears of War game is jam-packed with content, so there's a lot of questions. If the game launches with 100% of the content from the original trilogy, people are going to flip out in a good way. So I'm hoping that's the direction Microsoft goes with this. So Gears of War was once the biggest multiplayer game on Xbox Live. Now, they haven't held that title in a long time, but the series is popular. Gears 5, we're not going to talk about it anymore. But the older games, they are still relatively populated thanks to Xbox Game Pass, and a remastered collection treated the same way as Master Chief Collection could be the best thing that has ever happened to the series. So hopefully, Microsoft keeps the ship on course this time around and avoids a repeat of the disastrous launch for Master Chief Collection back in 2014, and they successfully revive this legendary third-person shooter franchise. I will keep you guys posted, but it's really looking good if you're a Gears fan. I'll see you guys soon.